let me try and explain it in plain English. I don't actually think it's a particular surprise what's happened to this. I spend a week writing one article, which is short enough to be, when I'm writing the article, I'll think about Twitter in mind. So I'll be thinking, if this is too long, no, it's too long for Twitter. You can't write a massive essay on Twitter. Even in a thread, it has to be short. So I'm thinking this has to be like 10 tweets in a thread. So I'm spending a week on basically one thread, and the goal is to make it the best possible. I just don't think that anyone else has got the time to do that.
Hey, Harry.
Hello, good to be here. Cheers, Azar.
Great to have you here. Huge fan of Marketing Examples, and I've been following your journey for a while now, listening to all the podcasts around where I've been, although not many. And man, you do a damn good job in explaining marketing concept in a very short, crispy way. So I really love that. That's just to introduce you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I think if I've had any success with the website, it's been from making it, as you said, short and crisp, is I think something which it really lacks in marketing. So I think that's definitely something where there's...
Yeah, I'm a long form content marketer, so it definitely took a time for me to get to see like what's really good at what you're doing and why is it actually taking off really well. But it makes obvious sense. So before moving forward, I want to understand a little bit about your story. You have can you just in brief terms tell me like what have you been doing before and why did you actually start at the marketingexamples.com?
Sure. So where do we start? I was in university about three and a half, I can't remember, just over 3 years ago, did economics, and I just really didn't like it at all. So in university, I kind of zoned out of the economic side of things, and I started learning to code because I thought that I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I just thought that coding would open up some doors for me. So I pretty much put my degree on hold and just did the bare minimum work and started doing loads of Wes Boss's courses. Massive fan of Wes Boss, and he pretty much took me to JavaScript, then Node, and slowly but surely I could make like websites. So then I started doing some startups. So my first attempt was I made a website where you could sell canvases online, really weird sort of Twitter canvases. So you could design your own tweet and then you'd sell it online. But it didn't go very well at all. We had like a product hunt launch. And at the time, that's all I really knew marketing was. I was rubbish at marketing at that point. We actually came up with quite a fun idea where we sent these canvases. This is the one marketing thing we did do quite well. We sent these canvases to YouTubers and we put really funny tweets on them. So I think, or even quite flattering tweets on them. So we sent one to YouTuber called Chili Jimenez in America, who's got about just over 1 million subscribers. And we wrote, I can't remember what the tweet said, but anyway, she does this thing called mail time. Well, she'll open presents on camera. So we wrapped it up in like really nice Christmas wrapping paper. It was around that time. And we wrote handwritten cards, and it was our first startup, and we watched her channel, et cetera, et cetera. And she linked the website, 140 Canvas, in the YouTube description. And the video got about, it's like 3 million views or something like that. So we thought, damn, our site's going to explode. She really loved the product, and she told all her followers, her viewers that, they should check it out. But we got about 7 sales from it. So I think when that happened, me and my friend kind of realized that people didn't really want to buy these canvases and they had no real idea what they were. So that was one startup down. Then I tried to make a website for musicians. I tried to basically make a SaaS where I'd make websites for musicians, which again didn't go very well. Then I tried to make a dating site for Kanye West fans, which had a bit more excitement. It kind of went semi-viral, but got quite a few users actually. But again, my lack of marketing ability let me down with that. And then my parents were like, "Look, you can't just live here and make startups forever." So they were like, "You got to kind of do something." So I got a job as a web developer, which was a pretty fun job, but I never really wanted to. I still, in my heart, always wanted to make products really, or make companies. So I did that for about a year, and then I started Marketing Examples while I was still while I was still working as a web developer. And the thing was, I think it works really well because it was a project. Marketing Examples, for people who don't know, is just like basically a blog about marketing in its simplest form, which has got like a little bit of an audience. And it was the perfect thing to start while I was working in a job, because I could just come home in the evenings and sort of chip away at the articles. And there was no sort of customer support. There was no upfront coding, really. It was just fairly simple website on the internet. So it started taking off a little bit, and then I did a talk about this whole Kanye West thing around this time, and people seemed to like the talk. So what happened was, I then got talking to someone who ran an email company called Email Octopus, this guy called Tom, who was their head of operations or something like that. And I said to him, "Look, I'm starting this marketing website, and it's really small at the moment. I had like an email list of probably less than 1,000 at that time, but I'm hoping it's going to really grow and take off and stuff. And I was wondering if Email Octopus wanted to sponsor it, because I was using them as my email service provider." So Tom said that they'd normally laugh at you and say, "Absolutely no way, we're not taking a gamble on this." But I think because he'd seen a bit of my sort of story, I guess, with the Kanye dating, which did fairly well, like, he kind of thought maybe I could grow this thing. So he took a bit of a gamble and sponsored the website for 3 months. And as soon as that sponsorship came through, I said to the web development company, "Look, I'm going to try this and grow this for 3 months." So I went down to, well, actually, I left. I dropped down to 2 days a week, and then I went full time on Marketing Examples. So that's the beginning of the story, I guess, and that's how the website came about in a sort of short form 5-year run through.
Yeah, people always think that it's just like a quick rich scheme, like you just got one idea, one thing, everything worked out for everybody, and this guy just got like popularity very very quick. But there's always a backstory that nobody knows. So good to know that story. So tell me a little bit, like, initially you said in some other podcast that you started the Marketing Example, and it didn't, for a very long time, it didn't have that kind of traction. So what kept you going? What did you do there?
Well, let me think. I mean, a big change was when I started working on it full time. That was a big thing, because you come home from work and you're exhausted, and then you've got to write a marketing article, which is a high standard. And what I realized was that basically content marketing, which is the game I'm in, is a winner takes all game. Every single day you get on Twitter, there's like, let's say there's 50 marketing threads. Let's say on Reddit, again, there's 2 free stories which take off from Reddit. And if you can become one of those 2 or 3, you get all the attention. It's winner takes all. 1% gets 99% of the audience. So originally, my content was solid. It was like coming home from work, I'm tired, I'm getting an article out. But it just wasn't at that level where people were stopping and taking notes. They were just like, "Oh, this is kind of good, but a lot of people are writing about marketing stuff. Does this guy, yeah, he's all right, but I'm not going to subscribe to the website or whatnot." So then when I left my job, I realized this because I wrote one about Jeff Johnson, who was Nike's first employee. And I put loads of effort into it. I was like a sort of 2, 3, 4-day article, which for me at the time was loads. And it got to the top of Hacker News. And I started realizing, maybe there's a market for sort of, it sounds obvious, but most people don't realize it. There's a market for like really good quality stuff. So that was the shift. It sounds so simple, but honestly, I just started thinking, every single article was like, all right, I've got to be better than the last one. I've got to do better than the last one. I've got to do better than the last one. And originally my mindset was get an article out. That's it. That's the shift. I mean, there's lots of technical stuff behind that, but just purely, I think that's a point worth mentioning.
Yeah. So it makes sense. You said like, okay, the quality of content got better, and you kept the consistency running, even though it might have not done a good job, but still maybe better than the last one, and that kept you going. But tell me more about better. What does that mean?
It's a good question. I think better meant specifically. So a couple of weeks ago, I looked back on some of the earlier articles, and specifically, better, in my opinion, means saying the same amount, giving them just as much, but in fewer words as possible. So it became a game of words. It was like, how can I write a book about copywriting how can I compress a book's worth of value or like into 2 minutes? And it sounds ridiculous, but that's what the game was. So originally, I was just throwing paragraphs in left, right, and center, and it became it's something which people talk about, but honestly, reducing fat from writing is what made it great. Great sounds like me blowing my smoke up myself too much, but I think that's the key to writing. It's James Clear wrote a tweet which was good. How to improve your writing: double the examples, half the words, and that's literally what I've been doing. It's double the examples and it's half the words, and that's what people want. People want specifics. They don't want someone jabbering on for paragraphs without actually saying anything.
Makes sense. So by the way, I want to tell you something that you might not know, and it will make you really happy. So remember, there was a pop-up that you pushed online and said, hey, this is how the pop-up should look like, should have a social proof, and you showed DG in it, and you try to ask for in our pre-testing group that, hey, how does it look like? And right, I immediately added that to my pop-up.
That's awesome.
And it went from 0.5% conversion to 1% conversion because of that.
Really?
Just adding a social proof.
That's great. I think what I learned from that as well, the pop-up experience, was the one I posted on. So for those who don't know, we've got like a little Telegram group where you can just post copywriting or some kind of pop-up or whatever, and you get a bit of feedback. And I think that building in these loops into your work where you get feedback consistently is, I can't stress enough how important that's been for me. So the example with the pop-up is I shared something which I thought was quite good, but the people in the group were like, it's not clear enough, change this and that and this, and it made a really big difference. But the other thing where I'm doing this massively is my elder brother is completely like the bedrock of the website. So every single time I write an article or whatnot, it will go through him, and it's like a music producer, but instead I call him the reducer, because he just takes out stuff from the article to make it shorter, make it sharper, make it better, and it's ridiculously valuable for me. And if there's any way of building that into, it could just be a colleague at work who you really like, or it could be family, friend, whatnot. That's it's been such a game changer for me having that in place. I'm very lucky to have him.
Yeah, so that was my takeaway from your podcast with DG that not many people might be aware of. It's best like do the quality assurance, do the feedback, ask feedback from people, show them before even going live so that you get your content gets better. But I wanna pick on one thing which I personally am really curious about, and you can tell your story around that. How the hell you pick a content that gets so viral?
That's a good question. Let me think. So, firstly, I didn't have any kind of plan. I learned this as I went along. So originally, I learned by doing, and what I learned was people want a story. So if you look at my articles, which took off, how Jeff Johnson sold Nike, how Nike sold its first shoes, a story about how Phil Knight went from a guy selling shoes out of a car boot in athletics meets to Nike. And then that's A and that's Z. And there's a gap in the middle, which I'm about to fill with this marketing story. Another example is Andrew Schultz's, the comedian, sort of rise to fame. He went from a comedian who was doing New York stand-up, not getting booked, not getting any attention, to a guy who's getting more views on YouTube than most comedy networks. That, again, sort of took off. A third example of that is Lil Nas X, the rapper. How does he go from his mother's couch to biggest song in music history, Old Town Road? Again, fill in the gap. So there's two things here. Firstly, the story, but secondly is it's a bit of a kind of cop-out, but if you make marketing mainstream, you're also laughing. If you can tell a story about a rapper like Lil Nas X and his rise to fame and put a marketing lens on it, then people are like, I love Lil Nas X, so I'm going to tune in and read this. It's for example, I look at 2 tweets I did, which did very well. One of them's called Rihanna is a great copywriter. The other one's called, I did one yesterday, AOC has something correct. AOC studied copywriting. And it's taking these mainstream people and applying like concepts which marketers love to it. Because if you're on Twitter and someone's wrote a sort of article about some kind of technical copywriting which a company's done, chances are, and most people are not even like us. Like, we're really into marketing. Most people are just doing their job. They got a Twitter account, but they don't care too much. They're never going to share that. So if you can pull like a Rihanna into the mix, they're going to share it. You have to be a little bit careful because you can go too mainstream, where like your audience gets saturated with people who aren't necessarily marketers. So I've been watching that. Whenever I have big spikes in following, I kind of try and see, right, how many of these are actually going to buy something at the end of the day, or how many of them are working marketing, because you don't want to attract the wrong sorts of people. So okay, that's a very long-winded answer without really answering your question. There's a lot more to content. So I think the biggest thing in content, as well as kind of what I mentioned, is it's all about consuming. So the more you consume, the more you can produce, like the better stuff you produce. So if you want to have great examples, you've got to read a lot of books. You've got to follow the right people on Twitter. You've got to have your go-to marketing resources which you can copy from. And I treat myself like a police dog sniffing for drugs. Like, I got to find the fix, and where do I go? And it's everywhere and anywhere. Like, here's a good example. I was at a restaurant the other day. My mum had this big birthday thing. It was like 60th birthday. We went to a really nice restaurant for it. And this waiter started telling this story about Michelin guides. And I never knew this, but the Michelin guide is something invented by the company Michelin. So when Michelin started tires, they created this Michelin guide as content marketing. So what they did was it was a guide not about restaurants at the time, but about cars. And it was restaurants dotted around France to drive to encourage people to drive and eventually use Michelin tires. So as well, this guide would have like how to change a tire. It would have petrol stations which you could stop off on your visit and whatnot. So this waiter starts telling us this story, and then I'm thinking, geez, this is a great example. And I got back home and I researched it, and that's a new article coming out actually probably on Monday, which will be out by the time the podcast out, is based a bit around Michelin Guide and their content marketing and how that. So it's become like I mean, the simple answer summarizing my rambling is you want to be taking in the all quality information, consistent. Like, you, instead of, it's like almost an obsession. Like, how can I
It's like becoming a journalist for me. Like, it's like, you consume all the content and you pick what you really, really like, and then put it in front of the people and make sure that the headline is amazing enough. Make sure that you have combined a Venn diagram of things that are really good in marketing, and then combine them to the famous people, and then see if that actually spins up really well. So I feel like you kind of a journalist, and you're looking for great stories, and that's how I feel like.
The other thing I agree. The other thing which I'd add is that it's like, if you have 100 examples in your head and you can just pick the best one to write about, it's always going to be great, because you've got 10 and then you leave 9 out because they're not. So it's also about being selective. Like, most people, because they write one a day, people are writing articles so quickly, is idea, boom, done, average idea. Like, and for me, it sounds incredibly pretentious, but it's almost more like a musician making an album, where they're like, all right, these 3 songs we can leave off because they're just not good enough. So I wrote an article about Joe Wicks, for example, which I thought was he's this PE instructor in the UK who's taken off, and it was quite good, but it's never probably going to see the light of day, because if you have, I just didn't think it was good enough. It was good enough to, so I don't know, people don't see what I don't produce, I guess, which also helps. If you never put it out, it's never going to be judged. And I think there's also too much emphasis, because look, in marketing, you can either be SEO focused, which has incredible merit, especially for a site like which you run, where it's essentially getting people to the site and hearing about the product. But if you're a teacher, which I treat as, say, I'm slightly more like a marketing teacher in inverted commas, having a reputation for good quality is far more important than quick numbers. So if I put out 2 newsletters which are bad, suddenly everyone on the newsletter is like, geez, these aren't good anymore, and they'll stop opening them. So I'd much rather kind of treat it like a musician, where, all right, this has to be good, this has to be good, this has to be good. And if I was running marketing at a different company, that wouldn't be the approach. Like for example, I was talking to the founder of Riverside FM, and I said to him, Starter Story is a website ran by Pat Walls where it's got thousands and thousands of interviews with founders, and it's a content site and it's SEO driven to the heavens. And I said to the founder of Riverside, build Starter Story for podcasts. That would be my marketing for you. Build that on top of your product, which is like, as Dave Gerhardt would say, like a media company for your product. And it doesn't have to be 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 quality. It's just, it's a different type of media to pull people in. So there's different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Actually, just to wrap up a bit, I think great marketers, they really know who they are for and who they are not for. That's like one learning for me. And the other thing is like great marketers are really good at prioritizing and knowing exactly what not to work on as well. Like what you should doing and what you should stop doing. That's what DG also says it, right? So that's what I'm learning out of this whole talk, that you actually are very selective. But again, like it's very easy to say I'm being selective. Like tell me an example where you were really selective, and you gave an example just now, but like something that you already published and you were very selective about. So you took like 17 copywriting tips that you recently wrote, and you shared it and got really viral. So tell me how you actually selected that, and how did it actually went live, like, and which one did not go through, so people know that as well.
So this is an example I love to talk about because I mentioned the Michelin Guide marketing, where you basically, this leads into the copywriting tips. I'm not going off on some angle, where Michelin Guide marketing is like, you're creating a Michelin Guide, the standard in the single greatest thing in a particular industry, that's so we're leading into the copywriting. The goal for me was really simple. I want to have the best article on the internet, period. And whether I've done that or not, I don't know. But that was what my goal was. I want this to be the best resource on copywriting. I want it to be as good as a free course, just in terms of tips. I want it to be as good as a paid course. So I got with this one. Normally, that's not the mindset. With this, I was just like, I'm going to try something new. I want this to be the best single resource possible. So I started taking copywriting courses. I took one called. I took this. What's it called? It's the Honey Copy has got a course on copywriting. So I did that course. He's got this, and then I bought. I have them on my Kindle somewhere, but I think Dave's recommended loads of copywriting books, so I bought about 6 of them. And the week before the article, I just read every single one, and I would just highlight the sort of the key bits in each one onto this Google Docs. So I wasn't very good at copywriting before I wrote this article at all. I had very little experience in it. So the only way I could come up with a good article was just by taking in all the information people had put out. There's no skill on my part here other than being a good researcher. So I did this course. There might have been another course. I can't quite remember. I think and there was Sugarman, Anne Handley's book, a bunch of other books which I read, and condensed these 6 books and of course into 17 really short tips. And then I had to find the examples for them. So that was, I think, just a case of going on landbook.com and going through so many websites trying to find examples. But as well as that, I think I said to people on a few Facebook groups and a few Slack groups, and also on Reddit, like I'm writing this article about copywriting and I'm looking for really, really good examples. And I think even on Dave's group, someone shared a couple which I used, and I sort of crowdsourced the information. So, and to have context, like this was an article which I think it got like 7,000 sort of likes on Twitter, which is one of my best ever, and contributed loads of newsletter subscribers. So I got the payoff from it. But you look at like what went into it, and it was me trying to crowdsource all the tips from great writers. I emailed a couple of copywriters as well, saying like, what have you got? Reading numerous blogs, reading books, and taking a course is the level which I put in to try and get out something which was quite good. And that's much more than I normally do. This is just a sort of a special case of like, I really wanted to just try and do the best thing on the internet. And I think that's a mindset which is quite healthy in a way, because I think there's a lot of content for content's sake out there. Really, that's the
Yeah, yeah. You still did not get to the answer about selectiveness, because I think what I'm getting into is like it's kind of an art rather than you can teach people how to. That's what I'm leaning into, because when I do the podcast, right? Whenever I do the podcast, I have the content and I have to chunk most of the content out and see what is really good at it. And so I think what I'm learning from you is that you pick those copywriting tips and then you said, okay, I'm gonna go and find the examples of it, and these are the most important copywriting tips for you, and that will be the best. And it's just a mindset of yours that come in. But like I think being selective is very hard. Like it's kind of an art. It's not a kind of something that you can just learn something easily.
well, I think that we're not great judges of our own work a lot of the time. So this is where I have this feedback loops in place where there's a couple of people, friends I go to share the article. I think I shared this article with my brother and maybe 3 or 4 marketers, and I said to them, "Can you rank the tips?" That's what I said. So
Oh, oh.
rank these 17. I think I said do the best 5 and do the worst 5, and then you start. It was at that point. Sorry, there was about I think there was about 21 at that point. So you get the feedback from these different people, and the same things crop up. They're like, this one doesn't really make sense. It's not as good as the other ones. So you can then strip that one away and maybe try and rework it a bit and use it as a different example, or maybe it never gets used. But I don't think I wonder. I'm asking you actually. The question is, I wonder how applicable this mentality is for. It's a way of generating really good content, but should everyone go through these lengths? I don't really know. I mean, I'm not sure.
So to be very honest, I feel like when I create really good content gets viral is when I really am hard on myself that this content has to be really good. And when I write an article for SEO, even for that, I have to make sure that this article is way better than the existing one which are ranking on it, and also it is giving a unique insight. So recently I've learned from folks, from other marketers, that the content has to be unique, insightful, and immediately actionable. And the one factor that I bring in is that it raises your eyebrows. Is okay, something that I didn't know about. Like, there's a surprise element to it. So whenever I write an article, even it's for SEO, I'm thinking about these things, and I'm thinking that people might not have the entire context on that article, or people might have, but there should be a raise of an eyebrows. And also, like, would I pay $50 for some kind of content like this if this was there? So these are my criterias. But again, selection is very hard because, like, I mean, what you're doing is like really quality content, right? So to select there are like maybe 100 plus copywriting tips out there, and to select out of them 21 and then cut down 4 of them to 17 is a very hard job. So I think these are my criterias, and but I feel like it still takes it. As I said, it's still kind of an art where you just know that these are the things that you want to talk about. And maybe one thing that you gave a good example is that you actually went to a couple of marketers and talked to them and said, hey, can you please give me rank these? And something that I didn't think about at all, because although every content that goes out, I do share it with people, but like, people don't have time for my content. People don't have time to give feedback on my content. I have a time to give feedback. I can show it to 5 teammates and then show them the content. But maybe they love your content so much they want to help you out anyway, and they say, okay, whatever you're doing is a good job, and it's out of altruistic nature. And that's what I feel like it, because imagine, like, if I have to go somebody say, hey, can you listen to my podcast and give the feedback on it? So the only person who has actually given feedback on my podcast is actually my girlfriend, who heard the first at least intro of it and said, okay, this is something that I would cut out. And so it's hard, but I think in company you can actually be critical about each other's work and then really bring really good quality content out there. So that's how I think about it.
One thing which you made me think of is, um, I think this is true. Now, my content marketers might disagree, but I think that if you're producing some content and you don't believe it's going to rank in like the top 5, top 10, top page of Google, and also, sorry, either or, you don't believe it's good enough to be shared by friends, co-workers, yourself at least, and other people online, I don't see the merit. So if it doesn't fit one of those 2 buckets, I just don't see who's reading it. It has to either be an SEO piece, which is sort of top page at least, and then hope it raises up, or it has to be something good enough to be shared by yourself and friends. I mean, maybe I'm really naive here, but if you're not doing one of those two things, I just think you're wasting time.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, many content marketers or marketers are not thinking about it. So the last question for you is like, man, trying to get Twitter followers, trying to become the growth marketing enthusiast. I would not say an expert because I think you can never be an expert. And I'm going in the journey of this podcast to learn more about growth marketing. And I still don't get that many Twitter followers. I mean, you do good content. I do good content. People love the content. People say, "Hey, you did a good job. I like the podcast." And I've seen a lot of people writing good content. Whenever I share a Twitter thread, I don't get that much of traction. So, what is the hack to Twitter? Like, I mean, I'm not gonna say hack. Like, what is the key to Twitter that you're doing so well that works all the time, right?
I'm just looking at your feed now, trying to work out why, you know. Firstly, you're not doing it badly. I think it's one. Twitter's one of those things where it happens slowly, then it happens all at once. So it's like if it takes you a year to get to 2 years to get to 5,000, it will then probably take you 4 months to get to 10,000. 2 months to get to it. It goes once you get momentum, it's much easier. The hard thing about Twitter is you're pushing a ball uphill for a long time. So it could just be one of those things where you'll keep pushing and then you'll fly. But specifically, the reason why the account has done well is you can boil it down to um, just think about it purely. Let me try and explain it in plain English. I don't actually think it's a particular surprise what's happened to this. I spend a week writing one article, which is short enough to be, when I'm writing the article, I'll think about Twitter in mind. So I'll be thinking, if this is too long, no, it's too long for Twitter. You can't write a massive essay on Twitter. Even in a thread, it has to be short. So I'm thinking this has to be like 10 things, 10 tweets in a thread. So I'm spending a week on basically one thread, and the goal is to make it the best possible. I just don't think that anyone else has got the time to do that. So I'm picking someone like Andrew Schultz, someone who I think is really interesting, really good at marketing, and thinking to myself, I'm going to write the best thread about Andrew Schultz. Now, this also doubles as like a newsletter, as a bit of SEO for ranking for like Andrew Schultz marketing or whatnot, and then it goes on my website. But Twitter's at the forefront of my mind. Now, the thing is, as I said, I'm sharing it all as a thread. So most people are sharing links. They're jumping on Twitter and they're posting an article. But it's difficult to persuade someone to just get off Twitter and click an article. It's people do it all the time. It's how many times we've seen HubSpot share an article, and they're very good at marketing, but like no one's clicking on it. So I'm taking the value from the website and shoving it directly in front of people's faces. That's a big deal. The other thing on top of this is a Twitter account is like a TV network, like a TV station. Let's say you're ESPN. This is something I used from Matthew Kopach. I'm completely stealing his analogy here, but he's like, as a Twitter account, you're like ESPN. You've got to do sports if that's your thing, or you've got to do marketing, or you've got to do sewing, and that's your. You might be interested in kayaking, but you can't mix and match too much, or as people just like, what am I following this guy for? So the number one question to answer, you're trying to build a Twitter account, in my opinion, is why should somebody follow me? If you answer that question, you're onto something. So for me, my bio is short, sweet, practical marketing. And you can scroll down the thing, and I have never tweeted about my breakfast, about me, about any of these things. It's just literally the same marketing, and people know what they're getting. It's marketing examples. It does what it says on the tin. You see the account, marketing examples. He's not selling me anything. Easy person to follow. Hold on, I got some more tips coming. One sec. Let me think. Oh yeah. So another thing I'm a big fan of is you want to make your tweets. I call it like crystal meth. That's kind of what you want to be. What you want to be going for. And what I mean is, it's got to be clean. You don't want to be throwing in hashtags, too many ats. When Naval Ravikant wrote the Twitter thread, "How to Get Rich," 50 tips, 50 points about that. It wasn't how to get rich at Paul Graham hashtag startups. It's just not, people don't retweet that. It's too much like marketing. So I don't think I wouldn't say never ever use hashtags on Twitter. I think it just marks you out as someone who is maybe trying a bit too hard. I think that on Twitter, people don't like being marketed to. That's at least my opinion. Let me think. A few. Oh yeah. So one more point is my marketing account is basically the broad point here is copy and steal, not directly tips, but steal themes. So what I've done for marketing is a complete clone of what someone called Steve Shoger did for design. He
Yeah,
took
I saw that. Yeah, I did see that.
Steve made design. He made design accessible in images, and he did these incredible images where he would like highlight bad and good design with a cross and a tick, and then he would have little like text snippets about why the design's improved here and there, and it's something you have to look at. So I thought these tips are just going down so well for design. No one's doing these for marketing. So I took his style and applied it to marketing. Now, if there's someone who does NFL stuff, want someone on my email list, and we got talking, and he started cloning my marketing style for NFL, and it's working for him. So it's like you don't want to copy you don't want to copy words. That's like no one likes that. But you can take a style and adapt it to your new thing. So honestly, have a browse down Steve Shoger's Twitter feed, like maybe even my Twitter feed. And let's say you're trying to build a startup in podcasting. How can I take like what this person's doing and apply it to a different space?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Totally makes sense. I really this is the mindset I'm talking about. This is the reason why this podcast happened, because I think it's the mindset that you have to go through, not the tips and tactics that you have to follow to actually do it. Cool. So that's basically it from my side. I just have to get through the rapid fire round, and this is just for me. People may listen to it and get to know, but it's just me getting to know you a little bit, and you have to answer faster. That's the only thing.
All right, fast figures. I'm going to give some. Well, I don't know. Well, let's rock and roll. I'm looking forward to this round.
Cool. What's your favorite movie or season?
Season, like documentary thing.
Anything that has a series in it, right? It's a series of things.
Office is the best comedy in the world, period, bar none.
Office.
But the UK Office, the US Office can not be included.
Okay, I watched American Office and I didn't like it, so I have to give it to UK Office. If you have $1,000 today for your existing brand starting from zero, where will you spend it?
Woo. I would. I'd buy time. Corny answer, but honestly, I think that when you operate, I think that I could put that money into Facebook ads, but I'd just somehow get to work on the site more. That's kind of dumb because I'm working on the site already. So I'll give that's a cop-out answer. But honestly, for someone who's freelancing right now, if you get given $1,000, the best thing to do is drop a client and work more on your project, because that's the biggest lever. But if I had $1,000, sorry, this isn't quickfire, I would. Well, actually, you know what? I have $1,000 and I haven't bothered to promote my site yet, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, actually, you spend it, but you didn't say it. You spend it on books and stuff like that. So you.
That's a good answer. I would spend it on. I'd invest in myself. I'd take 10 more copywriting courses and try and write another article.
What stage of the growth do you really love? Acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, referral?
Referral by a million miles, because that's the loop.
Free money, right? What book would you recommend to me and the audience? Any book?
I'd go with, for marketing, I'd go with Hey Whipple Squeeze This, but for life, I would go with Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Nice one. Who's your favorite growth marketer? I'm not talking about marketer. I'm talking about growth marketer.
It kind of shows. I would say Julian's an obvious answer. Maybe Julian.
It's not an obvious answer. Nobody has said it actually.
Okay, well, Julian then. Sorry, Julian. I sounded really negative when I said the answer, but I think you were very good.
Okay. What's one piece of advice you'd give to growth marketers? Now we have an advice side of it, right? So
I would say don't think about growth very much, and just think about, again, really corny, but think about the human being. And honestly, you're talking to someone on the bus, and if you're going to talk, that's all every single interaction is. Someone's just on a bus, on their phone, reading your whatever. And if you shout at them and talk to them like a dick, they're just going to tune out, put on their face mask and headphones. So just remember that you're talking to that individual person on the bus.
Makes sense. What's the one bad piece of advice you've ever got?
Bad piece of advice. Um, I think that someone probably once told me that university was necessary. This is awful advice. I think I don't think it is.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's basically the last one is like, what's the one city you've traveled and want to go back and why?
You know what? I've got an awful social life. I don't travel very much, so that I haven't got a good answer. I would say uh, city. I mean, I wouldn't say city. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. If you want to go on a nice holiday, go to Llanthony in Wales. It's not a city. There's very little going on, but like it's we camped. I camped there with my friends. Really great place.
Cool, man. Thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it. I think folks must have gotten really good value out of this. And I know you don't do that a lot, so I really appreciate you spending time. And like that's the only thing that's lacking in your current process. So thank you for giving me time actually, and learning a lot from you, somebody who's way younger and somebody who's actually figured out marketing more than me.
No, I don't think that's true in the slightest. By the way, I really don't. I think you're doing a great job with user pilot, and I don't know. I really appreciate it, and I had a very good time. Thank you very much.